I don't know where to start. I don't want to mess it up. What if I make a mistake? I can't draw. I hate my handwriting. What do I put in it? These are just some of the paralyzing thoughts that ran over and over in my head when starting my first Book of Shadows. In this video, I show you inside my first Book of Shadows when I first started my magical path as a witch. Hello fellow magical beings. In today's video I am going to give you a walkthrough of my very first Book of Shadows from when I was just starting out as a witch. If I had to describe the style of my first Book of Shadows, I would probably say it's more of a scrapbook crossed with an art journal type rather than a traditional type. When I first decided to start a Book of Shadows, I had all the same fear-based thoughts that most witches have. This kept me frozen from even contemplating starting a Book of Shadows, but my love of the craft compelled me to want to explore and document this amazing part of my life. I had my why, and I just needed to figure out my how. And this is how I started. Let's take a look inside. So I'll just undo it. Just have it. Just open it up. For my first Book of Shadows, I chose a already half-used journal because I felt it was the least intimidating book that I could write in. It was already used. It wasn't in any way fancy. I hadn't spent any money on it. So if I threw it out, if I hated it that much, I could throw it out and it was no big deal. And the cover of the book was actually this really ugly fluoro green color. When I finished with filling up the journal pages, I decided that I wanted to cover it because I hated the fluoro green cover, and I actually cut up an old shirt that had this, I don't know if it picks it up on camera, but it has this unusual pattern on it which reminded me of dragon skin, and the other part of the shirt had these black cats, which is kind of cliche, but I like it, so it's my Book of Shadows and it was created by me and it's for me. So the first section, like I said, was a really old journal, back 2012, and I did the usual journaling style of, you know, journaling what was going on in my life. So I've just put all those journal entries from 2012 to 2017. I have just clipped them all together and just wrote that that's what this little section is. And then I actually have marked here the start of my witchy journey. So the last entry that I wrote in this notebook as a journal entry was I was already starting to move towards the path of witchcraft. That was February 2017. And then I just start making some notes usually by, I don't know if you can see that. Let me, yeah, it's a bit better. I start making some notes. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Tourmaline, Mr. Obsidian, can you move over there a bit? So I started listening to different YouTube channels. This was Denise Litchfield. I started listening to podcasts. The Hippie Witch, Joanna DeVoe. I'm just going through making sure I don't show anything too private. So some more notes from podcasts, and I've just made sure that I've dated. Make sure if you're going to put anything in your book of shadows that you date your entry. Biddy Tarot podcasts, a horoscope. So I didn't actually write where I got this from. I'm a Gemini sun, so that was the horoscope back in December 2017. This was my first, I hope that's coming out on camera okay. This is my first go at reading the tarot for myself. Another one, this was a 2-card draw, and then I decided to explore the sabbats in my book of shadows. So I wrote down some rituals. This was a quote. I didn't write down where from, but I do remember it was from a postcard that I saw. And that was the end of 2017, because our summer solstice is just before Christmas. So on to 2018. This was out of a magazine. I've cut this out of a magazine, but it doesn't actually say which one, but it just goes through my number of the year. This spread was my word of the year for 2018, which is steadfast, and this little envelope just has the meanings, some meanings and words and things associated with the word, with my word of the year, steadfast. From that same magazine, I've got my sun sign horoscope for Gemini, my moon sign horoscope, which is Libra, and some of the intentions for the year. This was me exploring the difference between an epiphany and intuition. Sometimes words just come to me and I know what the word is, but I don't know, I might not know what the meaning of the word is or understand the meaning of the word, so I will go and research the word. Here's a spread of all the books that I want to read, and all the full moon dates for 2018. And I've just got a prosperity spell here, and these are just cut out of a magazine. This is just a sticker. This is just I think this was just a brown paper bag that I just cut out. I'll just cover that up because it has a bit of information on it about my moving on spell that I did for New Year's in 2018. And these here are from you know, the bonbons that you get for New Year's that you pull. Well, I've just kept these bits that are right on the ends, the parts that you actually pull, and they're actually gold and sparkly, so I kept those. This is another image out of a magazine. Here I'm exploring Mabon through pictures and colour. This is my Mabon spread. The Celtic eightfold year, and this is actually for the southern hemisphere, so midsummer, summer solstice, it's in December. This is the full moon ritual that I was doing every full moon in 2018, so I always did the same basic full moon ritual. This one is my Samhain spread. Back in 2018, I was an extremely poor witch. I tried to use what I had instead of buying things because I was still just starting my path. I was just exploring it, and I didn't want to run out and buy a whole lot of things. So this Samhain spread, these are from, you know, when you buy the old style pencil cases. When I say old style, I mean I remember having these pencil cases back in the 1980s when I was in primary school. It gives you a bit of a hint of how old I am. And the pencil cases came with a black and white grid of the alphabet, and you cut out all your little individual letters of your name and put it in the little plastic slots. So that's what that is. I've kept those from when my daughter was in primary school. This was actually the front of a card that I was given, that I have cut out and put on here, and this I have cut that out of a magazine. And the ritual that I did for Samhain, and this is also out of a magazine. This is just the words that I spoke during my ritual. I would have printed this, I would have found this on Pinterest and printed it off. I will leave the link to my Pinterest account below, and you can have a look through my Pinterest. I also liked to include in my book of shadows, this was from the fifthelementlife.com. This is a new moon in Taurus, and I put the date here. This was what was in the email newsletter. So just the information and the beautiful, I mean, that is just gorgeous. That is beautiful. Beautiful picture. And Shani Nicholas is a astrologer and also sends out newsletter emails, and I would go through and print my Gemini sun sign and my Libra moon. This is from the Witchy Mummy, and this is a list of books. If I read it, I've just made some little notes here. So we've got more horoscopes. This is just a spread that I've done with some quotes and things on, it says inner voice, intuition, and higher self. This was out of a catalogue for a shop called Perfect Potion, and they have the different chakras, where it's located, the purpose of the chakra, the aromas, and their own personal essential oil blends. Here's some tarot decks that I have heard mentioned or have received high recommendations for, and this is just a little quote by Avalon Cameron. If you're in the YouTube world, I'm sure you know who she is. I think she's fantastic Southern Hemisphere witch, and the quote is, when you start working with the cards, they take you on a journey, and that has definitely been my experience. My birthday in 2018 this is the card that I pulled, and I just photocopied it, and this here is from an incense packet called Fairy Dreams, and the great thing about using the packets from incense is that it actually makes your Book of Shadows smell really nice too. This is a newsletter from the Brisbane Tarot School, and they often include tarot spreads in their newsletters, so I like to print those out. And then we've got the winter solstice. That's just a journal entry about my winter solstice, and here is some information that I have about Yule. This was cut out of a magazine, magic.org.au I have here, and this is part of the bonbons that I was telling you about before. This was actually one of the card. This is the card, the wrapping, the outside of the bonbon that I kept, and I've just cut out and stuck it in here because I thought the trees reminded me of this winter solstice. This is a poem called The Light Within the Shadow of the Winter Solstice. If you want me to read the poem out to you, let me know in the comments down below, and I can do that in another video. This is further into the winter solstice, and I've done another journal entry here about how I've been feeling over the winter solstice. This is a spell from Spellbox in Melbourne. Hi to all the witches down in Melbourne. This is just another little poem, I guess, on the winter solstice. And then we head into Imbolc, and this is a Imbolc spell. This is my Imbolc ritual. This is just a recording of a dream that I had, and some more books that I want to read. So yep, my book list is enormous. This article here is about trees, and includes a tree meditation. Let's put that back down so you can see. Oh, creasing up the cloth. Can't have that. And this is another journal entry of an experience that I had forest bathing, and this is in Japan. It's a common practice, and that's a little information about it, and that's the name of it in Japanese, which I won't pronounce because I'll probably butcher it. This is my Ostara spread, so I've got this was a card, and what I have done is just cut out little windows and written Ostara, and just opened the little windows, and I've put in little photos of what Ostara meant to me. Oh, this was an Ostara blend. This was an Ostara oil blend, and this was, you probably can't see it, but there's a little bee gathering pollen from the flowers in spring, and this was a painting of a light that beautiful painting of light that I actually saw at my grandmother's old age home, so it was done by one of the patrons in the nursing home. So, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful to look at. And this was just my Ostara, the ritual. I've just written down here what I did for my ritual, and just a photo of the ritual that I did. Here's a spread on a planning session that I had sat down and done about what seeds am I planting for spring, and these were the 4 areas. I'm not too sure if that shows up, but it says money, spiritual, mental, family, and parenting, and the things that I wanted to work on. Another spread that I did, I traced these images from some pictures that I found on Pinterest, and just colored it all in, and I've just written some things on how I can make my goals grow. So same money, mental, spiritual, family, and parenting, and just the actions that I can take to make my goals grow. This is a curse breaker. This is from one of Biddy Tarot's podcasts about birth cards. So these are my 2 birth cards, the World and the Empress, and just some information about that. This information here is actually about creating a safe place using imagery, and is a relaxation technique. I got this at one of the counseling sessions that I was going to when I was learning to cope better with my mental health and anxiety. And then I was at the end of the journal, but I hadn't actually finished for the year. So what I did is I stuck in an extra notebook. I just stuck it onto the back of this page, which is why you can see this, because I was trying to cover up. It was just another really ordinary notebook that, you know, school kids take to school. And I believe that it actually was an old exercise book that I went off my daughter's, that I went through, and I just pulled out all the pages, and the pages that were left I used to keep going with my Book of Shadows. So you can see in the beginning it was really, really simple, and it's gotten not super complicated, but I have started to get a bit extra because I'm starting to feel more confident and competent in what I'm doing and what my style is, and really feel into things. All I can say is that it just comes over time, and it just comes from doing it. So the more that you do it, the more comfortable you feel, and you can see from what I've done that it's a gradual change. So from that perspective, I think it's really interesting to see, you know, where I came from, you know, just writing out little bits of information into sometimes elaborate spreads. So this was my Beltane spread, and I'm really starting to get into the associations. Beltane for me is about love, and I've got pearls, I've got a goddess, butterflies, and this is all about my Beltane. You know, Mother Earth and the sea and the ocean are really important to me for Beltane. Same with roses and flowers. So you can see lots of pink and pearls. So I've got a spell here of transformation, and this statue is of Persephone, who is a goddess of spring. This I found on Pinterest and printed it out. I don't think it was actually for Beltane, but I used it for Beltane during my ritual. And this is the newsletter for November from Brisbane Tarot School. Here's another journal entry, and the same thing. So I've just used here just some pretty paper, some flowers that I got from $2 shop for like, I don't know, I think it was like $1 or something, and this is from the same incense box that I was telling you about before, Fairy Dreams, and I've just cut it up, and you can see it's all goes with this color. This spread is actually a little bit about my family history, some of the furniture that I have inherited from my family and the story that goes with it. And then we're back to the summer solstice again, and another picture off Pinterest. I think this was also off Pinterest from memory. This is a spread for the summer solstice from the Brisbane Tarot School. Here is another newsletter printed out from, oh that's right, Sarah Wilder, that's her name, who is the fifthelementlife.com, and she has the Animal Kin Essence Oracle deck. That's what it is. So though she would send out those quite regularly. So this is actually a reflection of the year through my word of the year, which was steadfast. I had that at the beginning, and this is just the reflections that I had of the year and closing out the year. Throughout the year of 2018, every sabbat I did an altar setup and took a photo, which I did put in the back of my Book of Shadows, and wrote down all the correspondences that I used. So they're all the altars that I had, and I've included the things that I used. And it ended with a Merry Aussie Christmas and a photo of some of the highlights of my year. If you would like me to go through all the altar setups that I did in my first year, that I have kept a record of in my Book of Shadows, please do let me know down in the comments, and I'm happy to run through those in another video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.